Now for these questions, we're dividing by 10, but apart from 40, the numbers we're dividing, so our dividends, are not numbers that are in the 10 times table. So that means that we're going to get decimals with tenths as our answers. So first, we have 1 divided by 10. Now this looks strange because we're used to seeing division questions written with the larger number as the dividend and the smaller number as the divisor. But division doesn't have to be that way round. We can do 1 divided by 10. If we write out the number 1 with a decimal point on the end, we can copy down the decimal point. Now when we divide, as long as the number we're dividing by is larger than 1, the number is going to get smaller. So the digits are going to move to a smaller place value. And we're dividing by 10, which has 1 0, so the digits move 1 square to the right. So if we copy this 1 down, 1 square to the right, we now have 0.1. So remember, to the left of the decimal point we have our ones column, and we can't have an empty ones column, so we need to write a 0 in this square here. So we have 0.1, and that's our answer. And that makes sense, because dividing by 10 is the same as finding a tenth of something, if you think back to when we did finding a fraction of a number. So 1 divided by 10 is 0.1, because 0.1 is 1/10. So what's 4 divided by 10? Well, we can write out the number 4 with the decimal point at the end, because there's always really an invisible decimal point on the end of every whole number. Then we can copy the decimal point down. We're dividing, so the number is going to get smaller, which means digits are moving to the right. And we're dividing by 10, which has 1 0, so the digits move across 1 square to the right. Now we have 0.4. The place value before the decimal point is our ones column, and we can't have an empty ones column, so we need to write a 0 in this square. So we have 0.4, and that's our answer. Now 6 divided by 10. We write out the number 6 with the decimal point at the end. We copy down the decimal point. We're dividing, so the digits are going to move to the right, and we're dividing by 10, which has 1 0, so the digit moves 1 square to the right. If we have an empty ones column, we need to write a 0, so now we have our answer 0.6. So notice 1, 4 and 6 are all numbers smaller than 10. They're all smaller than what we were dividing by. And that's why in our answers we have 0 point before the tenths. So if the number you're dividing by is smaller, then your answer will always be less than 1. Now we have 40 divided by 10. Well, we already know how to do questions like this. 10 times 4 is 40, so 40 divided by 10 is 4. But I want to use the same method that I've been using so far, because what we're really doing is the same thing. So if we use the method we've used so far, we write out the number 40 with a decimal point at the end. We copy down the decimal point, and now we're dividing by 10, so the digits are going to move 1 square to the right. So we can copy this 0 down 1 square to the right, and do the same with this 4, and we get 4.0. But remember, 4.0 is the same as 4. A 0.0 on the end just tells us that we don't have any tenths, but a whole number tells us that as well. So we can just write 4 as our answer. Now 13 divided by 10. We write out the number 13, copy down the decimal point, and we're dividing by 10, so the digits move 1 square to the right. We can copy this 3 down and copy this 1 down 1 square to the right, and we get 1.3 as our answer. For 28 divided by 10, we write out 28 with a decimal point at the end, copy down the decimal point. We're dividing, so the digits move to the right, and if we're dividing by 10, the digits are going to move 1 square. So we can copy down this 8, 1 square to the right, do the same with this 2, and then we have our answer down here. That's 2.8. So let's think about what we were doing here. One of our questions was 4 divided by 10. So here we can show 4 whole rectangles, all coloured in. Now dividing by 10 is the same as finding a tenth. So if we keep only 1/10 of each of our rectangles, when we put what's left together, we have 4 parts out of 10, or 4/10. So that's why our answer is 0.4. With 6 divided by 10, again, dividing by 10 is like only keeping 1 part out of 10, or finding a tenth. So if we put what's left together, we have 6/10, so 0.6, because the digit after the decimal point is our tenths digit. We had 13 divided by 10, so I've drawn 13 rectangles. Dividing by 10 is the same as finding a tenth, so let's keep only 1/10 of each rectangle. Now, if we put what's left together, we can fill up 1 whole rectangle and 3/10 of another rectangle. So that's 1 whole and 3/10, so 1.3. Our last question was 28 divided by 10. So I've drawn 28 rectangles. When we divide by 10, what we're really doing is keeping just 1/10 of what we have. But if we put what's left together, you can see that we have 2 whole rectangles coloured in, and we have 8/10 of another rectangle. So 2 wholes and 8/10 is 2.8. Now this answer makes sense. If you think you know the answer to 30 divided by 10, and 28 is just a little bit less than 30. 30 divided by 10 is 3 wholes. So 28 divided by 10 must be just a little bit less than 3 wholes, and 2.8 is just a little bit less than 3. You can see that we're close to having 3 whole rectangles, but because our dividend was 28, not 30, our answer is 2.8.